Welcome back to Photo Conversations, where we have conversations about photography, film, and so much more, about life. And of course, lately about so many other things like, cars, old cars, and, camping and doing so many different things. Basically, the things that I'm passionate about. Well, today I want to talk about conversation. Basically, the power of conversation. When most people meet me for the first time, they get the impression that maybe I'm an extrovert because I will speak at every opportunity that I get to speak. But I would like to disagree and say that I'm not an extrovert. I'm an extrovert by conditioning because I realize that if I'm not an extrovert, then it's going to be hard for me to survive. But most of my childhood, I was a little bit quiet, though I had bursts of, extroversion. And I would say it's a mixture of both a bit of an extrovert, but also a bit of an introvert. So today, I thought I would, share something about why men should have conversations, but also generally why conversations are very, very crucial in this day and era. I'll give you just a short story to break the ice and also to basically contextualize this whole concept of conversation and how powerful a conversation can be. So last week, I was invited by a friend to go and meet somebody who is also a friend to the person that invited me. So basically, the gentleman gave me a call and was like, Watanda, I want you to meet this guy because I feel you guys have the same likes, you're passionate about certain things that I think are very similar. So we jumped into the car and then drove to this gentleman's home. Unfortunately, we left a bit late. We left up at about 6:30, so we arrived when it's almost getting to 7. And the gentleman kindly welcomed us. He gave us the basic hospitality any gentleman would accord to another gentleman. So we introduced ourselves and made acquaintance with one another, and we got deep into conversation. But as we got deep into conversation, we started to realize that exactly the things that we are passionate about are quite similar. And I would say by the time it got to maybe 9 p.m., 9:30, we were still in conversation, deep in conversation, laughing, making jokes, and, learning new things from one another. And for me, by the time I left this gentleman's home, I was really, really impacted in a very positive way. I'd learned so much because he was slightly older than me. He knew things that I didn't know, but I also shared the little knowledge I had about, different things. And then, of course, we exchanged numbers and we, promised that probably would meet up some other time to do, to progress with our conversation. And that brings me to the core of this video. I feel that conversation is more powerful than we actually give credit. This year, one of the things that I'm trying to do is to preserve these conversations. And here is why I want to preserve these conversations. You all know my YouTube channel is Photo Conversations, but as I started doing the photo conversations, I also realized, it's not just about photo conversation, it's more than photo conversations. There's so much that men and women and, people should basically talk about. So these are some of the insights I feel, as to why we should value conversation and we should preserve conversation. So first of all, conversation is a transmitter of knowledge and wisdom. Most of the times when I've met people that are slightly older than me or sometimes more experienced than me, and then we have a conversation, most of the time I've found that I've learned one thing or another, and I apply that knowledge and before you know it, it's making my life much better. It's making, my general well-being much better. It could be a health tip, it could be, a tip about car maintenance, it could be a tip about professional work, it could be anything basically. So I feel that when you share experiences with people, you learn new things that kind of make you better, and then the process continues. When you learn, you also share, and that's the power of conversation. You get new knowledge, you relearn new things, you learn new methods. It's like how farmers meet up and talk, and probably they're talking about this pest or this disease that is attacking their crops, and each one of them shares how they're going about it to alleviate maybe the condition or the situation. So I feel that when people have conversations, the knowledge that is exchanged goes a long way to help people, to basically help community generally. Secondly, conversation is a way of releasing, the steam that people have, over time, to release the stress and also frustration that you have as human beings. We all know that a problem shared is a problem half solved. When we share our problems or our frustrations, it could be maybe in marriage, it could be in other relationships, it could be a work thing or a career thing. Most of the times, just talking about something simply lightens the burden on your heart. So when we meet with people and, say maybe, oh man, I have this condition and it's making my life hard, just talking about it, you might find someone, giving you some kind of consolation that eventually gives you some sort of solace, and, you feel much better. And of course, usually it comes with more advice or more recommendation on what to do. So it helps us release steam and stress. And this is one of the reasons why I'm continuing to do these conversations. And over time, I'm realizing that photography is just a platform, but there's more to conversation than photo conversations. And that's why I feel like I should continue having more conversations with different people, learn, and also be able to release my own kind of frustrations. The other benefit of conversation is entertainment. I remember when I was in high school, I used to sleep in this cubicle with two good friends. That was Mark and George. And every evening before preps, we would have like a 30 minutes break before we'd, be chased by the prefects to go for preps. So we'd have these conversations around the cubicle, and they would attract so many people, so many other students to come and listen. And it would get into some sort of debate where we would laugh. It was mainly comical because we were young people and always lively, and it kind of entertained people. So sometimes you might not be looking for knowledge, but you might be looking for pastime, and the best way can be a conversation. We've all had like blackouts in our houses when there's no electricity, and all appliances that would entertain us are basically switched off. The TV is off, the radio is off. What do you resort to? You eventually resort to conversation, and before you know it, you're bonding again with with your family or with your friends and all that. So conversation not only carries knowledge, not only consoles you, but also entertains you. You laugh, you giggle. And this reminds me of my elder brother. My elder brother was a very good storyteller, and he would narrate movies when we had a power cut. And man, it always felt like you're watching the movie as he narrates it. I don't know, maybe it was our child minds that were very imaginative, and especially when it's dark, you imagine. Maybe if it's a horror, you're imagining everything, and you're actually in the moment. So conversation not only does other things, but also entertains. Last but not least, conversation helps us to create meaningful relationships with people, but also helps us bond with people that we already are in relationship with. When you have a conversation with your friends, the bond gets stronger because you're actually spending more time with people, having a conversation, and you get to know each other. It's like, you could have a conversation with somebody, and before you know it, you said something that has offended them. That helps you to learn what offends people, what makes people brighten up, what makes people smile. So when we do this over and over, you create bonds that are strong. And of course, through relationships, there's so many other things that follow when you are bond together, especially with family. Like maybe at the dining table, when you have a conversation with your family members, that's when you get to know more about their day, or get to know more about their personal lives, and that creates a stronger bond. One would be wondering why I'm talking about conversation as something very important. I personally feel that conversation needs to be given more attention than we actually are giving it. We've seen panel discussions, and I would say they're the basic form of conversation that is televised or that is captured in real time and later probably broadcast for the masses to watch. So, but that is a privilege for organizations or corporations that have a budget, like TV stations and radios. But then what happens to conversations that you have with a friend at a bar, at a restaurant, or even as you walk, or even as you take a walk back home, or you take a walk to go and watch the Arsenal or Manchester football match? What happens to those conversations? I feel that these conversations, the casual conversations, non-panel setup like kind of conversations, the Jua Kali conversation that you're going to have with somebody downtown, I feel like we haven't given these conversations their due value or their real importance. And because of that, we miss out so much from these conversations. And one of the things I want to do this year is to focus on preserving these conversations, capturing these conversations because of the value that they carry. I remember back then when my mom was still alive, we were quite young, and one of the things that she used to do is she used to tell us, bedtime stories around, we would sit in the kitchen and at the fireplace where she's cooking from, and she would narrate these stories. And of course, she would narrate these stories in her mother tongue. And I think that's how we actually got to learn our mother tongue. We learned how to speak the language because she transmitted it through these stories. But also, these conversations instilled certain values in us because some of the stories were metaphors for actual, life scenarios. I remember one of the stories that she always shared with us was a story about Nina Mulenge, and how this little boy would go out and come back late, and then one day he found this monster, and then the monster ate the boy, and then basically the story was supposed to deter us from moving out at night or coming back home late. So these are some of the values that we got through the conversations, and for me it's some of the memorable moments that I still have of my mother. So I feel that some of these conversations were very valuable, but unfortunately they were not carried on. I would say folk tales and bedtime stories, especially in the African context, they were the podcasts of back then. But simply because there was no technology to probably record these, so that's how we missed out. But I would say podcasts are just the same thing as, bedtime story or the folk tales around the fireplace. I would say it's the same thing, but only in a different generation. And what I'm trying to actually achieve is to have these fireplace conversations captured and curated and transmitted for generations to come, because then how will the incoming generations get to know how we lived, and how we basically our perspective on life. So basically, conversation, especially if well captured and curated for posterity, actually exponentially increases its value for the generations to come, because at the end of the day, then you have your knowledge, you have your ideas and skills transmitted onto the next generation. So going forward, you're definitely going to see me having more people come around this podcast studio space to have conversations about different things. At first, I was limited to photography because it's what I knew, but then I realized there's more to life. There's more, that people want to share with the rest of the world. And I guess this could be the platform to pioneer this kind of thing. Of course, so many people are doing podcasts, and I think it's a great thing to do that, because yes, the generations will watch and learn, or will watch and make better decisions. But I want to be part of this revolution of the liberal media space that anybody can jump into and then start having their conversations had across the world. So I would like to invite you to my podcast studio, where I'll be having different guests, and probably you might be one of the guests that will come here and share with us your life experiences. People think that for somebody to be credible enough to be hosted on a podcast or on TV to share their ideas, they have to be, some sophisticated kind of people or overly educated kind of people. But I would disagree, because some of our grandparents, some of our fathers are not the most formally educated, but they have the best knowledge that they've handed down to us. They're the most amazing conversationists that we've met. And I feel that everybody deserves an opportunity to have a platform. And there is no better platform than podcasting or having your YouTube channel and share these conversations. So I'm not going to go around looking for the elite, the more sophisticated people. So today you might have a mechanic from YSA sharing his knowledge, and the other day probably you have maybe a teacher, or even an elder in the community. So I don't think that conversation is a reserve for those that have high level of education, and I mean, I don't mean any bad, but I feel that everybody deserves a right to share their ideas. Everybody has a right to be heard. Hopefully you've learned something from my conversation with you, and going forward, you're going to be seeing me sharing more than just photo conversations, but having conversations about life, about everything that we can put our hands onto. Thank you so much for watching this YouTube video, and I'll catch you on the next one. Feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel if you feel that our content makes you better, or share, like, or comment in the comment section to give us ideas to better improve our YouTube channel. Thank you so much, and catch you on the next one. Bless up.